yo, I just act like I just came from somewhere else, but I just pressed record right again. Chapter 17, When Wendy Grew Up. Yeah, it's a bit melancholy, I suppose, from what I remember. I hope you want to know what became of the other boys. They were waiting below to give Wendy time to explain about them. And when they had counted 500, they went up. They went up by the stair because they thought this would make a better impression. They stood in a row in front of Mrs. Darling with their hats off. I mean, this is actually really nice, because just imagine the heart of a child, but also imagine the challenge it poses to Mrs. Darling, yeah, and partly Mr. Darling, to, to love such children who have been abandoned and who were lost for such a long time. They'll be eager to please, but they'll also be afraid to be cast away again. Which is why you have to take this serious, right? You don't want to ruin a child. And that's something that can make you cry on the inside. So it's a gift to be able to feel this much. Okay. They stood in a row in front of Mrs. Darling with their hats off and wishing they were not wearing their pirate clothes. They said nothing, but their eyes asked her to have them. They ought to have looked at Mr. Darling also, but they forgot about him. Of course, Mrs. Darling said at once that she would have them. But Mr. Darling was curiously depressed, and they saw that he considered 6 a rather large number. I must say, he said to Wendy, that you don't do things by halves, a grudging remark which the twins thought was pointed at them. The first twin was the proud one, and he asked, flushing, "Do you think we should be too much of a handful, sir? Because if so, we can go away." "Father," Wendy cried, shocked, but still the cloud was on him. He knew he was behaving unworthily, but he could not help it. "We could lie doubled up," said Nibs. "I always cut their hair myself," said Wendy. "George," Mrs. Darling exclaimed, pained to see her dear one showing himself in such an unfavorable light. Yeah, shame always works. Then he burst into tears, and the truth came out. He was as glad to have them, it's also a lot to worry about, of course. He was as glad to have them as she was, he said. But he thought, lots of boys. But he thought they should have asked his consent as well as hers, instead of treating him as a cipher in his own house. "I don't think he is a cipher," Toodles cried instantly. "Do you think he is a cipher, Curly?" "No, I don't. Do you think he is a cipher, Slightly?" "Rather not, Twin. What do you think?" It turned out that none of them thought him a cipher, and he was absurdly gratified, and said he would find space for them all in the drawing room if they fitted in. "We'll fit in, sir," they assured him. "Then follow the leader," he cried gaily. That's how probably the first, house for abandoned children was created. It's nice. I believe it to be really nice, but you need a lot of adults and stability also. "No, I don't. Do you think it is okay?" "Then follow the leader," he cried gaily. "Mind you, I am not sure that we have a drawing room, but we pretend we have, and it's all the same. Hoopla!" He went off dancing through the house, and they all cried, "Hoopla!" and danced after him, searching for the drawing room. And I forgot whether they found it, but at any rate they found corners, and they all fitted in. As for Peter, he saw Wendy once again before he flew away. He did not exactly come to the window. So if you could change your life and create also like places for children where they can grow up and just be appreciated, where they can contribute without being chided all the time or being given grades or something, where every child can just grow up to find out what it is and what it wants and what it can do and what it is good at, and then hone those skills and simply appreciate to contribute. I believe this is possible to do actually inside cities, that if you manage to raise awareness and maybe you can generate incomes, you could buy houses or something, or just fill houses with life again and with light, and then have some adults. And I believe this to be possible. You could transform entire cities like this just by taking away all this labor that, and that's then, but you have to also take away the corruption. So if you know how to create large sums of money, maybe you have a way, you start channeling energy, and then there's suddenly a lot of money, you can buy homes. And then you find people, trust in the law of attraction, let these people live inside the homes, but they have to work, they have to do their sadhana, they have to maintain the house and stuff, they have to keep it clean. But they'll be given food and stuff, so they don't have to do anything for that. But yeah, they can maintain a garden, grow crops. And it's one house that doesn't send off a bad vibe. That's a benefit. And if you have 10 houses, yeah, that's a true asset. It's not the house itself that's the asset, because it generates money for you from the tenants. No, it's the asset. The people are the asset. That's the true asset. And that's what people don't get. People, I have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, partly. He only talks about material wealth, He doesn't, he doesn't talk about people. He just talks about material wealth. So he just has his, and then he buys his cars, and he has his da 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 da. But, it's not enough to just have a house. You also have to fill it with life. And this is probably why I'm talking again, why I'm recording myself. Because if I shrink into the background in my own home and I feel afraid, to raise my voice in here, then who am I? Then I'm nothing. And I'm just like everyone else, just sitting around, afraid to make a mistake. So to me, this is also opening up again, creating space, holding, maintaining it, being present, showing that I'm alive, And I don't need to call with anyone on a phone for this. I'm just saying. So it's a tough choice to want to grow, but we have to grow for nature, for the tribe, for being together. As for Peter, he saw Wendy once again before he flew away. He did not exactly come to the window, but he brushed against it in passing so that she could open it if she liked and call to him. That was what she did. "Hello, Wendy, goodbye," he said. "Oh dear, are you going away?" "Yes." "You don't feel, Peter," she said falteringly, "that you would like to say anything to my parents about a very sweet subject?" "No." "About me, Peter?" "No." Mrs. Darling came to the window, for at present she was keeping a sharp eye on Wendy. She told Peter that she had adopted all the other boys and would like to adopt him also. "Would you send me to school?" he inquired craftily. "Yes." "And then to an office?" "I suppose so. Soon I should be a man, very soon." "I don't want to go to school and learn solemn things," he told her passionately. "Well, it would be a school, if it would be a school where you actually learn things that you need for life, like cooking, like keeping a clean space, like being strong and stable, but also like being appreciated, then it's a different school of, it's like school of life. No, but it's also, that's the real thing you should learn. But this society just breaks you down. It really tries to shatter you, break you, so that from the broken pieces, the only thing you try is to escape. And that's how all this porn and the buying and the shopping, is just all a distraction. So that all the energy that seeps out of you because of all that trauma can then be used to generate money, because you are a battery yourself, and you're, unconsciously funneling it into really toxic things, such as, content sharing platforms. But by consuming it, I as a creator can tell you to stop doing it, but I can only do so because I have stopped doing it myself. I couldn't tell you to stop watching porn and strike the message home if I hadn't done it myself. So you first have to do it yourself, and when it's stable, then you can get the message across. I have tested this, it's the truth. And that's why a lot of people, they just think, yeah, I'm just gonna say, act like I'm doing this. And then maybe they've managed for 2 weeks, and then they told everyone, and suddenly it crashes, but they try to keep on telling people. Okay. Yes, see, and then to an office, I suppose so, I think Peter is better off doing his own thing. Soon I should be a man. Their idea of a man is not a man. Why should he become a man or want to be such a man? Why? All the men that he met, including the pirates, were just all broken people. So all the men you meet here in society are just all broken people. And that's a sad fact. So we have now millions or billions of people, but in terms of quality, there's nothing. 1% of the people that live today are actual people. The rest is just shattered stuff. And that's the truth. They're just all fragments of self. Nobody's really truly themselves anymore. They're just all fragments. And so you have to stop shaking hands and hold your own space. And from that, something truly magnificent can probably grow, right? Still waiting for the actual experience, but it feels much different. Okay, and then to an office. I suppose so. Soon I should be a man, very soon. I don't want to go to school and learn solemn things, he told her passionately. I don't want to be a man. You see, that's what I had. I just don't want to be schooled by people who think they know better. Because if I take one look at you, I already know. So you cannot teach me. Life taught me. I was being taught through spirit. And so the teachers that were trained here by the state only have one job, which is to make you feel terrible about yourself. Or if you're sucking up to them, they'll give you good grades. I usually receive bad grades because I wasn't a pleaser. I was just there. I didn't care. I didn't suck up to anyone. I don't want to go to school and learn solemn things, he told her passionately. I don't want to be a man, Wendy's mother, if I was to wake up and feel there was a beard. It's not just the beard, of course, because they all shave it off, right? Peter, said Wendy, the comforter, I should love you in a beard. And Mrs. Darling stretched out her arms to him, but he repulsed her. Keep back, lady. No one is going to catch me and make me a man. Well, where are you going to live? With Tink in the house we built for Wendy. The fairies are to put it high up among the treetops where they sleep at nights. How lovely, cried Wendy so longingly that Mrs. Darling tightened her grip. Yeah, it's just not good for her. I think Wendy just needs this kind of stability because she just wants to do all the family husband thing, but Peter just isn't the right guy for that. I thought all the fairies were dead, Mrs. Darling said. There are always a lot of young ones, explained Wendy, who was now quite an authority. Because, you see, when a new baby laughs for the first time, a new fairy is born. And as there are always new babies, there are always new fairies. They live in nests on the tops of trees, and the mauve ones are boys, and the white ones are girls, and the blue ones are just little sillies who are not sure what they are. I shall have such fun, said Peter, with one eye on Wendy. It will be rather lonely in the evening, she said, sitting by the fire. I shall have Tink. Tink can't go a 20th part of the way round, she reminded him a little tartly. Sneaky telltale, Tink called out from somewhere around the corner. What does he say? Tink can't go a 20th part of the way round. It doesn't matter, Peter said. Oh, Peter, you know it matters. Well then, come with me to the little house. May I, Mummy? Certainly not. I have got you home again, and I mean to keep you. See, it's also a bit like a prison. That's how I also felt in a way. Like I was also in a way being kept a prisoner. Sure, it keeps you alive. It makes sure you will grow up. But if Wendy would want to go, you know. But it would all be make-believe again. Because she apparently wanted to be a mother. And she wanted to have a husband. She just doesn't realize that Peter is just taunting her. You know. She's just full of hope. Ah, maybe it's him. It's not him. You know, it's not him. And that's just then a fact. He's just... Yeah, he's just trying to ruin a potential good mother. Yeah, it's like he's quite evil in that sense. But not really, he's just testing. So Wendy would go. But she would want to leave again. So she'd always be drawn apart. But you have to grow up. That's just the way it is. Well, you meet the people who refuse to grow up. And they drive, you know, ride around on electric bikes. Tink can't go a 20th part of the way around. She reminded him a little tartly. Sneaky telltale, Tink called out from somewhere around the corner. It doesn't matter, Peter said. Oh, Peter, you know it matters. Well then, come with me to the little house. May I, Mummy? Certainly not. I have got you home again, and I mean to keep you. But he does so need a mother. So do you, my love. A good point. Oh, all right, Peter said, as if he had asked her from politeness merely, but Mrs. Darling saw his mouth twitch, and she made this handsome offer to let Wendy go to him for a week every year to do his spring cleaning. Wendy would have preferred a more permanent arrangement, and it seemed to her that spring would be long in coming. But this promise sent Peter away quite gay again. He had no sense of time, and was so full of adventures that all I have told you about him is only a halfpenny worth of them. I suppose it was because Wendy knew this, that her last words to him were these rather plaintive ones. You won't forget me, Peter, will you, before spring cleaning time comes? Of course Peter promised, and then he flew away. He took Mrs. Darling's kiss with him. The kiss that had been for no one else Peter took quite easily. Funny, but she seemed satisfied. Of course all the boys went to school, and most of them got into class 3, but Slightly was put first into class 4 and then into class 5. Class 1 is the top class. Before they had attended school a week, they saw what goats they had been not to remain on the island. But it was too late now. And soon they settled down to being as ordinary as you or me or Jenkins Minor. It's just sad to have to say that the power to fly gradually left them. This is also about flying spiritually, which is why I dabbled a lot in shamanism and freeing the mind so you can fly again. And you have to learn to stay grounded. But you can fly. And that's a very good point that he, of course, doesn't get. He thinks, you know, nobody can fly ever again, but you can. Just saying, fly, Gary. Gary. But it just teaches you to fly. You don't have to keep doing this. Okay. Class 1 is the top class. Before they had attended school a week, they saw what goats they had been. Okay, it is sad to have said the power to fly gradually left them. At first Nana tied their feet to the bedposts so that they should not fly away in the night. Jesus, this is like retaking prisoners. And one of their diversions by day was to pretend to fall off buses, but by and by they ceased to tug at their bonds in bed, and found that they hurt themselves when they let go of the bus. In time they could not even fly after their heads. Want of practice they called it, but what it really meant was that they no longer believed. Yeah, I still believe in magic, stronger than ever. Michael believed longer than the other boys, though. They jeered at him, so he was with Wendy when Peter came for her at the end of the first year. She flew away with Peter in the frock she had woven from leaves and berries in the Neverland, and her one fear was that he might notice how short it had become. But he never noticed. He had so much to say about himself. See, he doesn't actually care about her. She had looked forward to thrilling talks with him about old times, but new adventures had crowded the old ones from his mind. "Who is Captain Hook?" he asked with interest when she spoke of the arch-enemy. "Don't you remember," she asked, amazed, "how you killed him and saved all our lives?" "I forget them after I kill them," he replied carelessly. When she expressed a doubtful hope that Tinker Bell would be glad to see her, he said, "Who is Tinker Bell?" "Oh, Peter," she said, shocked. But even when she explained, he could not remember. Why can he remember her? "There are such a lot of them," he said. "I expect she is no more. I expect he was right, for fairies don't live long, but they are so little that a short time seems a good while to them." When he was pained too to find that the past year was but as yesterday to Peter. You see, we as individuals are who we are because of what we remember about our lives, and sugar is known to create Alzheimer's. So you have to learn to simply also remember. I remember a lot of things about my life, but I also have made it a habit of occasionally remembering what I did, looking back at certain points. And there are there are some kind of nights, like spiritual, special nights before Christmas or something, where people write down what they all did. I don't know, I just make it a habit of remembering it and then going back occasionally, but not as an escape, just as a form of also appreciation. And sometimes you have to revisit memories again. But yeah, of course, also one hike turns into 10 hikes, turns into 100 hikes, turns into how many? I mean, you cannot place everything everywhere, but there are certain memorable mentions. Just like the first time I hiked through the night and really almost shat my pants from fearing I will be eaten by wolves. But there was a voice inside, it said, just hold your ground, keep focus, keep focus, keep focus. Which means stay in the middle. Don't say, oh, it would be so nice to meet wolves, because it may not be. And don't say it's gonna be terrible. Okay, you just, I hope I won't meet wolves, but if I would, it's still scary. So keep focus. But people used to live in the wild, despite the fact that there's wolves. And if I can learn to avoid my neighbors by leaving the house at the right time, then I can probably choose a path that will not bring me, across a wolf with a fresh kill or something. I'm just saying. Maybe there aren't any wolves here anyway. They're just saying. freaking out as usual for nothing instead of just making an experience. Wow, lower back is so terrible. Why can't I just stand without having problems? Well, he forgets everything. But I also wanted to remember. There are such a lot of them, he said. I expect she is no more. I expect he was right. No fairies don't live long. Okay, but they are so little that a short time seems a good while to them. When he was pained, too, to find that the past year was but as yesterday to Peter. It had seemed such a long year of waiting to her. So she was probably hoping he would fall in love with her and then... But to him she was just someone. But he was exactly as fascinating as ever, and they had a lovely spring cleaning in the little house on the treetops. Next year he did not come for her. She waited in a new frock, because the old one simply would not meet, but he never came. See, it is a bit sad. Because she wanted to love him, you get it? She really wanted to love him, and she tried her best, but he just wasn't interested. You can say it's in his nature, but it's just what he chose, right? To kind of wander aimlessly. It's like there's content creators who only play computer games. What a terrible escape. It's my opinion. Perhaps he is ill, Michael said. He is never ill. Michael came close to her and whispered with a shiver, perhaps there is no such person, Wendy. And then Wendy would have cried if Michael had not been crying. Peter came next spring cleaning, and the strange thing was that he never knew he had missed a year. That was the last time the girl Wendy ever saw him. For a little longer she tried, for his sake, not to have growing pains, and she felt she was untrue to him when she got a prize for general knowledge. But the tears came and went without bringing the careless boy. And when they met again, Wendy was a married woman, and Peter was no more to her than a little dust in the box in which she had kept her toys. Wendy was grown up. You need not be sorry for her. She was one of the kind that likes to grow up. In the end, she grew up of her own free will, a day quicker than other girls. All the boys were grown up and done for by this time, so it is scarcely worthwhile saying anything more about them. You may see the twins and Nibs and Curly any day going to an office. Yeah, terrible life, man. Each carrying a little bag and an umbrella. Michael is an engine driver, slightly married a lady of title, and so he became a lord. You see that judge in a wig coming out at the iron door? That used to be Tootles. The beer, yes, so I want to have adventures in my life. That's just what I want. Just want a real life. That's the only way to live. And it's still adventurous, despite my sometimes heaviness. It's gonna be heavy anyway. So better a bit heavy with excitement or not knowing than always trying to cling to securities. That used to be Tootles. The bearded man who doesn't know any story to tell his children was once John, who doesn't know any story, you see. It's just like all the magic is suddenly gone. I find this really sad. The reason people used to tell stories around the fire was because they actually lived lives and their parents lived lives. So if you don't have stories to tell, it just means you're living a life that ain't worth living. It's like the horse or the cows that you see feeding on, hay. It's a terrible existence. They don't have to, they don't actually enjoy being alive anymore. This is disgusting. Wendy was married in white with a pink sash. It is strange to think that Peter did not alight in the church and forbid the banns. Years rolled on again, and Wendy had a daughter. This ought not to be written in ink, but in a golden splash. She was called Jane, and always had an odd, inquiring look, as if from the moment she arrived on the mainland she wanted to ask questions. When she was old enough to ask them, they were mostly about Peter Pan. She loved to hear of Peter, and Wendy told her all she could remember in the very nursery from which the famous flight had taken place. It was Jane's nursery now, for her father had bought it, and the 3% from Wendy's father, who was no longer fond of stairs. Mrs. Darling was now dead and forgotten. Yeah, forgotten? Yeah, that's a bit harsh, man. You can say that she's dead, but forgotten, she'll live on. There were only 2 beds in the nursery now, Jane's and her nurse's, and there was no kennel, for Nana also had passed away. She died of old age, and at the end she had been rather difficult to get on with, being very firmly convinced that no one knew how to look after children except herself. Once a week Jane's nurse had her evening off, and then it was Wendy's part to put Jane to bed. That was the time for stories. It was Jane's invention to raise the sheet over her mother's head and her own, thus making a tent, and in the awful darkness to whisper, "What do we see now?" "I don't think I see anything tonight," says Wendy, with a feeling that if Nana were here she would object no further conversation. "Yes, you do," says Jane. "You see when you were a little girl." "That is a long time ago, sweetheart," says Wendy. "Ah me, how time flies." "Does it fly?" asks the artful child. "The way you flew when you were a little girl, the way I flew, do you know, Jane, I sometimes wonder whether I ever did really fly." "Yes, you did. The dear old days when I could fly." "Why can't you fly now, mother?" "Because I am grown up, dearest. When people grow up, they forget the way." "Why do they forget the way?" "Because they are no longer gay and innocent and heartless. That's why we practice acceptance, right? You accept what has happened in your life. Okay, I've watched porn, I've masturbated, but now I realize there's a better way, or a different way, a more wholesome way, a way that actually creates life instead of, smothering it. And that's just a choice you make consciously. Yeah. What is gay and innocent and heartless? I do wish I was gay and innocent and heartless. Or perhaps Wendy admits that she does see something. "I do believe," she says, "that it is this nursery." "I do believe it is," says Jane. "Go on." They are now embarked on the great adventure of the night when Peter flew in looking for his shadow. "The foolish fellow," says Wendy, "tried to stick it on with soap, and when he could not he cried, and that woke me, and I sewed it on for him." "You have missed a bit," interrupts Jane, who now knows the story better than her mother. "When you saw him sitting on the floor crying, what did you say?" "I sat up in bed and I said, 'Boy, why are you crying?'" "Yes, that was it," says Jane, with a big breath. "And then he flew us all away to the Neverland, and the fairies, and the pirates, and the redskins, and the mermaid's lagoon, and the home under the ground, and the little house." "Yes, which did you like best of all?" "I think I liked the home under the ground best of all." "Yes, so do I." "What was the last thing Peter ever said to you?" "The last thing he ever said to me was, 'Just always be waiting for me, and then some night you will hear me crowing.'" "Yes." "But alas, he forgot all about me." Wendy said it with a smile. She was as grown up as that. "What did his crow sound like?" Or crow, never quite know how to. Jane asked one evening. "It was like this," Wendy said, trying to imitate Peter's crow. "No, it wasn't," Jane said gravely. "It was like this," and she did it ever so much better than her mother. Wendy was a little startled. "My darling, how can you know?" I often hear it when I am sleeping, Jane said. Ah, yes, many girls hear it when they are sleeping. But I was the only one who heard it awake. Lucky you, said Jane. Yeah, the only one? And then one night came the tragedy. It was the spring of the year, and the story had been told for the night, and Jane was now asleep in her bed. Wendy was sitting on the floor, very close to the fire, so as to see to darn, for there was no other light in the nursery, and while she sat darning, she heard a crow. Then the window blew open as of cold, and Peter dropped on the floor. He was exactly the same as ever. It's clearly like a lost soul, right? And Wendy saw at once that he still had all his first teeth. He was a little boy, and she was grown up. She huddled by the fire, not daring to move, helpless and guilty, a big woman. Hello, Wendy, he said, not noticing any difference, for he was thinking chiefly of himself, and in the dim light her white dress might have been the nightgown in which he had seen her first. Hello, Peter, she replied faintly, squeezing herself as small as possible. Something inside her was crying, Woman, woman, let go of me. Hello, where is John? He asked, suddenly missing the third bed. John is not here now, she gasped. Is Michael asleep? He asked, with a careless glance at Jane. Yes, she answered, and now she felt that she was untrue to Jane as well as to Peter. That is not Michael, she said quickly, lest the judgment should fall on her. Peter looked. Hello. Is it a new one? Yes, boy or girl? Girl. Now surely he would understand, but not a bit of it. Peter, she said, faltering, are you expecting me to fly away with you? Of course, that is why I have come. He added a little sternly, have you forgotten that this is spring cleaning time? She knew it was useless to say that he had let many spring cleaning times pass. I can't come, she said apologetically. I have forgotten how to fly. I'll soon teach you again. Oh, Peter, don't waste the fairy dust on me. She had risen, and now at last a fear assailed him. What is it? He cried, shrinking. I will turn up the light, she said, and then you can see for yourself. For almost the only time in his life that I know of, Peter was afraid. Don't turn up the light, he cried. She let her hands play in the hair of the tragic boy. She was not a little girl heartbroken about him. She was a grown woman smiling at it all. But they were wet smiles. This is actually his nightmare, right? This is his nightmare. Then she turned up the light, and Peter saw. He gave a cry of pain. And when the tall, beautiful creature stooped to lift him in her arms, he drew back sharply. What is it? He cried again. She had to tell him, I am old, Peter. I am ever so much more than 20. I grew up long ago. You promised not to. I couldn't help it. I am a married woman, Peter. No, you're not. Yes, and the little girl in the bed is my baby. No, she's not. But he supposed she was, and he took a step towards the sleeping child with his dagger upraised. Of course, he did not strike. He sat down on the floor instead and sobbed. And Wendy did not know how to comfort him, though she could have done it so easily once. She was only a woman now, and she ran out of the room to try to think. Yeah. I suppose it's quite painful, because he was probably trying to get to a bit of light. He's clearly a lost boy, so he was trying to get to a bit of light, and suddenly it turns into his nightmare. Everything's wrong. Why he remembers Wendy then, it's hard to say, but she probably just struck an impression on him. So yeah, I've got that little boy inside. I feel a bit like this. You know, let's say you fall in love with a woman, you say she's gonna be my wife. For years you don't see her anymore. Well, maybe you come across her once, and then, zack, she's with another man, you know. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say a word. What would be there to say? I would just continue my life. I have ignored more people, simply because there's a certain amount of pain, you know. I'm good on my own to a certain degree. So after what happened with my neighbors and in the garden, where I tried to raise like a compost heap to have soil, right? Because I really wanted to do a good job. In the end, the compost was taken away, and I felt completely shattered. And that's why I simply chose to not go into the garden, do no work in there at all anymore. Just work hard to someday maybe find myself in nature and to create content. And to me, this is in a way an escape. It's not just an escape, it's also, well, I'm choosing to be really detached, dissociative states. I have practiced being in a dissociative state because life is too painful for me. And people can't explain it to me, but I am in a sense like a little child. So I have a beard, I have long hair. I hear myself speaking, but inside I still feel a bit like a boy. And maybe that's gonna change, but I'll rather keep the boy alive. Peter continued to cry, and soon his sobs woke Jane. She sat up in bed and was interested at once. "Boy," she said, "why are you crying?" Peter rose and bowed to her, and she bowed to him from the bed. "Hello," he said. "Hello," said Jane. "My name is Peter Pan," he told her. "Yes, I know. I came back for my mother," he explained, "to take her to the Neverland." "Yes, I know," Jane said. "I've been waiting for you." When Wendy returned diffidently, she found Peter sitting on the bedpost, crowing gloriously, while Jane in her nightie was flying round the room in solemn ecstasy. I don't know why it is here that I often feel like tears welling up. "She is my mother," Peter explained, and Jane descended and stood by his side, with the look on her face that he liked to see on ladies when they gazed at him. "He does so need a mother," Jane said. "Yes, I know," Wendy admitted rather forlornly. "No one knows it so well as I. Goodbye," said Peter to Wendy, and he rose in the air, and the shameless Jane rose with him. It was already her easiest way of moving about. Wendy rushed to the window. "No, no," she cried. "It is just for spring cleaning time," Jane said. "He wants me always to do his spring cleaning." "If only I could go with you," Wendy sighed. "You see you can't fly," said Jane. Of course, in the end, Wendy let them fly away together. Our last glimpse of her shows her at the window, watching them receding into the sky until they were as small as stars. As you look at Wendy, you may see her hair becoming white and her figure little again, for all this happened long ago. Jane is now a common grown-up with a daughter called Margaret. And every spring cleaning time, except when he forgets, Peter comes for Margaret and takes her to the Neverland, where she tells him stories about himself, to which he listens eagerly. When Margaret grows up, she will have a daughter, who is to be Peter's mother in turn, and thus it will go on, so long as children are gay and innocent and heartless. 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 How many children are truly heartless? Sorry, but it's just hard to understand that that you can have an impact on other beings' feelings. So I've been reading Gorillas in the Mist, and what you can also tell from this is that there's always this kind of like Smeagol character who's a bit shady, who likes to torment others, who's also looking for darkness. So such children also need proper guidance, right? They need to be taught. If you have such an manipulative nature, you have to be taught to take responsibility and always channel in the light. Which is why, to my mind, in this society, these children are just let loose as surgeons on people. And then I can agree with Harry Potter, the nutters that cut people open. Nobody needs to be cut open. Most of the issues that people have here are health-related, emotional stuff, bad habits that developed because of trauma that just manifests all kinds of toxic behaviors, you know, diet and just seclusion from nature. And then they just run around and they look for more pain under the influence of, you know, heavy sedatives. So some people are already addicted to morphine. Morphine is also, of course, a character from Harry Potter. Yeah, so it's like realizing when you loved Harry Potter and you read it and suddenly it doesn't do it anymore for you. Damn it, I've grown up. Yeah, just treasure the times you used to read this. And then simply do something else, right? Make a new experience. Go hiking. This is what I keep saying. It's just what I keep saying, you know, just go hiking. Okay, now I have to see. But I finished. You know, from the point where I thought I will never manage to finish, I finished. Right, awesome. How long was this one? Wow. I mean, I think you're good to go, my friend. You know, do your own stuff. Just be responsible. I'm opening the window. You know, everyone who's living in this society is more like, you know, pacing around inside a prison. You know, I see people, it's the best weather, but they have the windows closed all the time. And every day they just watch TV. Nobody's forcing you to watch TV. You know, you don't have to do this. You can just read books. So I use my electronic gear to be creative or to, yeah, read books, you know, this kind of stuff. Now I don't feel like cleaning, but I feel like I have to. What time is it? Yeah, it's 7. 7 in the evening, so it's still a bit light. If I clean now, then maybe later I can read a bit. You know, maybe I can do this today. Soon I'll start with the Earthsea, just reading it privately because, yeah, I can't read it to you because it's not in the public domain. And I probably wouldn't really do it justice because I just comment too much. But to me, it's a process. I'm not reading this just for fun. I'm reading it because I'm being told to do this. You know, this is not, I'm not doing this because, yeah, I really like doing this. No. You know, I don't like this life. Like I said, it's not what I think life is about. But it's what you make out of it. So I'm trying to do my best. But it's not really a nice way of existing in this society. But that's what I can talk about. Like, this isn't really life, you know. This is just a highly toxic existence. And the amount of time it takes me to actually become whole again just shows this is never normal. You know, to break children, to then juice them until they die like deflated vegetables in some old people nursing home, you know, full of medication and stuff. This isn't really what I believe life to be about. So yeah, I call this open rebellion, just in my own way. You guys just have to stay away from trying to rile people up into violence. And you don't, you know, you cannot on certain platforms criticize certain schemes. This is like certain trigger words, just stay away from them. Like the CP thing, right? You know, with all the fluids they try to get into your veins, you know, that kind of stuff. That's coming from large corporations, you know, saying you really need that, you know. So the word has actually, yeah, vaccine with a V. Right, on a podcast you can do this differently. In a book you can do this, but not. Yeah, on odyssey.com you can do this. But here, forget it, man. You'll get a strike very fast. So I had to adapt to this. So this is just the first layer. There is a deeper layer. Much deeper. Much, much deeper. Okay, now I'll see. I still have half a liter of milk. Open. Maybe I could do something with this. I could fry myself some potato things later. Just make it a nice evening, you know. I render these videos first. After the 3-hour thing, you know, I just take the same thing again. So I don't have, you know, it just takes a couple of minutes. And that's a good sign. So sometimes you have to put in first a lot of work, like to figure out how you are. I realize now that this is who I am. I cannot shut this out. This is simply the truth. For me, if I read something, I have to be honest about it. If I feel terrible in between, I'll rather talk about it to confront you also with, yeah, some people feel like this. So you also got to take care of yourself. And that's the most important thing at the moment for you. You got to figure yourself out. Because I doubt that you already have children and a wife. But if you do, then try to do everything together. It is possible. It's just you have, you know, having family can also be really nice. So hold your planks. Stop eating sugar, stop drinking coffee, you know. If you already have a family, I'm alone all the time. You think this is heaven? Forget it. Yeah. You get heaven half the time, otherwise you will not appreciate it anymore. That's life. Half the time. You will be really happy and content, you know, if you worked hard to be there. Otherwise, you know, it's just going to be darkness all the way. And I've already had that as a child, so I wanted to change it. And that's the way it is then. Wow, it's just always so much dust in these apartments. Okay, I'm gonna turn this off. Cheerio.